Operation Gideon's Chariots is a go, and the IDF has returned to full-scale ground maneuvering in the Gaza Strip. The goal of this operation is to hit Hamas hard and not to let them recover until they release the remaining hostages and agree to disarm or leave the Gaza Strip entirely. The IDF has announced a strategic shift in the Gaza Strip in the fighting, and the 5 IDF divisions inside Gaza have set a 72 to 96-hour deadline to achieve all of their objectives. This includes a special operation in Khan Yunis and the assassination of yet another senior Hamas official. This time, it was Ahmed Kamel Sarhan, a senior Hamas military official, and according to reports in Arab media portals, he was taken out by undercover Israeli operatives. We'll have all the details for you very soon. And meanwhile, amidst the talks on the deal, the IDF plans to seize 4 enclosed areas in the Gaza Strip, dividing it into 3 zones. According to the report, evacuating those areas will take at least 3 weeks. This will mark phase A of the strategy for taking control of Gaza. Before the ground operation even began, the Air Force was hard at work, intensifying strikes to soften up Hamas positions and prepare the ground for the troops to move in and take control. And meanwhile, the Saudi channel El Arabiya reported on Sunday evening that the body of Mohammed Sinwar, Hamas's former commander in Gaza and the brother of the slain leader Yahya Sinwar, was found inside a tunnel along with the remains of 10 aides. This included Rafah Brigade Commander Sabanech. This is the confirmation we've been waiting for, that the Israeli airstrikes on this tunnel complex was successful in taking out Sinwar and several other senior Hamas officials. At the same time, humanitarian aid shipments into the Gaza Strip have been resumed under heavy pressure from the United States of America. In short, the new reality in the Gaza Strip resembles a complex chess game. While Israel exerts unprecedented military pressure on Hamas to release the 58 hostages, the Israeli diplomatic delegation also remains in Doha, Qatar, for intermediary negotiations with Hamas. On Prime Minister Netanyahu's instructions, an Israeli team is negotiating in Doha, Qatar, for the hostages' release, as well as ending the war, demilitarizing Gaza, and exiling senior Hamas figures. An Israeli source stresses Israel wants a deal but won't wait forever. These are dramatic hours. With that in mind, the proposal on the table in Qatar and Hamas's conditions are all up for debate and for discussion. One idea being discussed is now considering a new offer under which 10 living hostages and half of the remains of those who have died in captivity would be released in 1 day in exchange for a 2-month ceasefire. Hamas is demanding that President Trump personally guarantee the agreement and that Steve Witkoff shake hands with a senior member of Hamas's political bureau in order to seal this deal. But United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio declared that the United States stands with Israel and supports its effort to destroy Hamas, saying there can be no future of peace and prosperity in Gaza as long as Hamas rules by force. Well said, Secretary Rubio, and I think this sums up where we are in the Gaza Strip as of this morning. But that's not all that's going on in Israel this week. There are also some dramatic developments in Israel's northern arena. The regime of Syrian interim president Abu Muhammad al-Julani has set a 10-day deadline for armed groups to either agree to being incorporated into the armed forces of the state of Syria, or appropriate measures will be taken, according to the Defense Ministry of Syria. This steps up the possibility of a return to a civil war in Syria, which would not be a good thing for Israel or anyone else in this region. On the other hand, there are reliable reports of forces which have already sworn loyalty to al-Julani, committing atrocities against the Alawites and other minorities, including Christians in Syria. So we'll have some more details about that for you later in the report. To To the south, the Houthis in Yemen have not given up on their campaign against Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport, issuing a stark warning to airliners to leave immediately for your own safety. And finally, there have also been some dramatic developments in the nuclear negotiations with Iran, as United States Special Envoy Steve Witkoff drew a red line in an interview on ABC, while Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian flatly declared that we will not agree to give up uranium enrichment for research purposes, and again attacked the United States' support for Israel's war in Gaza. So, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what's happening in Israel on day 591 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are acting under the direction of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we begin, I want to invite you to TBN Israel YouTube channel. We need you to click that subscribe button. It really helps us reach more people around the world, and also make sure that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Thank you so much for this support. And speaking of support and sharing the truth from Israel, early Monday morning, the Israeli Air Force intensified strikes in the Gaza Strip ahead of the expected ground incursion. This followed a week in which the Israeli Air Force carried out more than 670 strikes on Hamas targets throughout the Gaza Strip to disrupt enemy deployment and support the ground actions. In the lead-up to this advance, IDF language spokesman Colonel Avichai Aderi announced the intention to strike in Gaza and began directing the civilians of the Gaza Strip. This is an early warning before an attack. The IDF will strike with great force any area from which rockets are launched. Responsibility for evacuation and for the civilians suffering rests with the terror organizations, foremost Hamas. For your safety, move immediately westward to the known shelters in El Mawasi. In the initial hours of the operation, dozens of terrorists were eliminated and Hamas positions were demolished above and below the ground, while the IDF reported that it had seized dominating terrain inside the Gaza Strip. There is a plan to continue with these operations until several key objectives have been met, and the IDF has massed 5 regular and reserve divisions inside the Gaza Strip, posed for intense fighting inside built-up areas. As the plan progresses, Gaza's population will be divided into 3 zones, separated by 4 areas under Israeli control. A map leaked by diplomats briefed on this plan shows the military areas in the north, in the center, and the south, with civilian zones between them. According to the map, the IDF will control the northernmost strip up to Gaza City, south of the Netzarim corridor, along the Morag axis, and near the southernmost city of Rafah. The plan, reportedly called Phase 3, full conquest of Gaza, would bar Gazans from moving between zones without permits, and goods would only pass through after security checks with photo ID or barcodes. Bulldozers are expected to travel the Netzarim corridor in the coming weeks, building a military infrastructure separating civilian areas north of Rafah and south of the Netzarim corridor. Also, 12 sites marked within civilian areas indicate locations for humanitarian aid distribution, suggesting implementation of the Witkoff plan, under which the new Gaza Relief Fund, approved by Israel last week, will begin work before the month's end. Jerusalem has reportedly agreed to expand the number of safe distribution sites to help the Gazan civilians. The Prime Minister of Israel's office added in a statement on the IDF's recommendation, and to enable the intensified campaign to defeat Hamas, Israel will allow a basic quantity of food into Gaza to avert famine that could jeopardize the operation Gideon's Chariots. Israel will act to prevent Hamas from seizing this aid. While all of this is going on in the Gaza Strip, the Prime Minister's office said that on Netanyahu's instruction, the Israeli negotiation team in Doha, Qatar, is exploring every possibility for a hostage deal. The talks center on Witkoff's outline, which includes the release of roughly half the living hostages and some remains of those who have died in captivity. This will be followed by negotiations on ending the war, while one mediator is reportedly trying to force a clause forbidding Israel to resume fighting even if no long-term agreement is reached, which presents a major obstacle. Prime Minister Netanyahu is in constant contact with the Israeli team and with Witkoff, with several calls reportedly held overnight between Sunday and Monday. Officials hope that combined military and diplomatic pressure on Hamas will soften the terrorist organization's stand and lead to an agreement. In recent days, Hamas has slightly shifted from its all-or-nothing stand, but still demands strict guarantees, including a United States pledge that Israel will not resume the war during the talks, a total ceasefire of about 6 weeks, and no resumption afterward, even without an agreement. However, an Israeli source has warned that Israel wants a deal but won't wait forever. If no accord is reached, we'll move to military decision. Maybe later a deal will come during the maneuver, but on much tougher terms. All military weight will fall on Gaza. Hamas leaders should get the message. A senior Israeli security source added, "The war in Gaza is nearing its end," hinting at possible progress towards a settlement. And elsewhere, United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio told CBS in an interview over the weekend that the United States supports total destruction of Hamas, declaring, "We support the elimination of Hamas and a future for Gazans free of Hamas and full of opportunity." Yet he said that Washington seeks a ceasefire to release more hostages. "We will not do anything that harms Israel's security, but if a mechanism can free hostages, including the slain, and end the war leading Gaza to peace, prosperity, and no Hamas, we will consider it." Amidst all of this kinetic and diplomatic activity, Saudi news portal El Arabiya reported on Sunday that the body of Gaza Hamas leader Mohammed Sinwar was found inside a tunnel together with those of 10 top leaders of the Hamas organization, including the Rafah brigade commander Mohammed Sabaneh. This provides confirmation that last Tuesday's airstrikes targeting these evil men was successful as had been initially hoped for. Another story to come out of the Gaza Strip this week was about the elimination of Hassan Aslich, who posed as a journalist and even sometimes wore a blue flak jacket and a helmet with the words "press" on it, but was in fact a member of the Khan Yunis brigade of Hamas. This has been conclusively proven by the captured Hamas documents and internal memos. Nevertheless, in most reports about this story in the international media, the headline was "Israel assassinates Palestinian journalists," and that's all that most people around the world ever heard about this story. This is an example of the kind of false narrative that leads to Israel losing support around the world, as that's why here at TBN Israel we work hard to bring you the truth. We hope that you want to help us by sharing these videos on YouTube, by following us on social media, and above all by subscribing to this YouTube channel and praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for the truth to come out of Zion. These are the ways that you can be part of this team and help us share the truth. Now, amidst all the reports about humanitarian catastrophe in the Gaza Strip and the need to send in supplies of food and other essentials, there is a story that is not getting reported on enough, and that is the humanitarian situation in Israel. Right now, because of this war, Israel is facing a hunger crisis like never before. Over 30% of the country's farmland is located in conflict zones, and because of rocket fire, evacuations, and damage, millions of pounds of crops have been lost. Families have been displaced. Jobs have been put on hold. Entire communities are living in uncertainty, and many are struggling to get a hot meal on the table. Leket Israel has made it their main target, rescuing food and feeding those that were hit hardest by this war. They're collecting surplus from farms, from hotels, and from suppliers, and getting fresh, nourishing meals to people who need them now, delivered with care and with dignity. But here's the truth: they cannot do it without your help. The Bible says, "Blessed are those who consider the poor." This is your moment to stand with Israel, not just in words, but in action. So please, go to mealsforisrael.com. Again, that's mealsforisrael.com and donate now. Your gift helps feed Israelis affected by this war. Now, getting back to the news, and we're switching our focus to Israel's northern arena. The Western Syrian Alliance, an organization founded in Washington at the beginning of May to protect the Alawites, the Christians, and other endangered communities in Syria, reported over the weekend that immediately following the United States President Donald Trump's announcement of lifting the sanctions on Syria, forces affiliated with the Islamist administration in Damascus began attacking minorities, including Alawites and Christians. The report included testimonies of witnesses and video footage which appears to show forces loyal to the regime attacking and ambushing members of minority groups in the Homs area. It is important to point out that this report is not confirmed and the source is obviously not objective, but it does track with what we've seen in the past few months in Syria. The regime of Abu Muhammad al-Julani is no doubt aware of these events, and perhaps that is why on Sunday the regime issued a warning to armed groups that they have 10 days to agree to integrate into the regular armed forces, or appropriate steps will be taken against them. The warning came from Syrian Defense Minister Arhef Abu Kasra, who has a fearsome reputation from the civil war that raged in Syria for most of the past 14 years. However, it might take more than a warning from a man with a fearsome reputation to bring this situation under control, as Syria remains filled with thousands of independent gunmen, local militias, ideological cells, and factions that are opposed to the new regime. The call to unify forces under the Defense Ministry is an attempt to create the appearance of sovereignty and authority, and candidly, it would be better for everyone, including Israel, if it works. But across the border, especially on Israel's northern Golan Heights, officials are watching anxiously. And amid reports of contacts between Israel and Syria, the chief worry remains the history of Syria's president as an extremist jihadist and a possible tie to these extreme groups. Al-Julani is saying a lot of good things, and he's even talking some concrete steps which we see as positive, but his past is impossible to ignore, and the problems he faces in the present make it difficult to be optimistic about the future. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on developments on Israel's northern arena, and as always, we ask you to help us by sharing our videos on YouTube, following us on social media, and subscribing to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. Now, switching our focus once again to the ongoing negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian spoke at a conference in Tehran over the weekend, offering up some of the standard regime rhetoric on a number of topics. Among other things, he harshly criticized President Trump and the United States of America, accused Israel of sparking war needlessly, and emphasized that Iran will not forego its right to enrich uranium for research and for energy. He also accused Trump's support of Israel by saying Trump came to the region and said that Iran poses a danger. We are bombing homes? Are we murdering scientists? On the inauguration day in Tehran, did we murder Ismail Haniyeh? He accused Israel of these things. And then he turned his fire on Israel over the Gaza war against the murderous terrorist organization Hamas. He asked, how can killing, destruction, and annihilation be presented as an achievement? They see themselves as peace envoys and wage endless wars. They create wars that are hard to exit. It is important to point out that Iran's leaders often make fiery speeches in public, but then quietly accept talks and even compromises when speaking with foreign leaders and with diplomats. Indirect talks between Iranian and United States officials are ongoing, and we'll probably have more to tell you about that later this week. And finally, we shift our focus to Yemen, where Nasser el-Din Amir, a Houthi spokesman, posted a threatening tweet on X on Sunday saying, "In the coming hours, Yemeni forces will carry out military operations against Ben Gurion International Airport in Israel and other Zionist airports due to the latest Zionist escalation against Gaza and aggression against Yemen, and pursuant to the Yemeni leadership decision to impose an air blockade on this and other airports in addition to the naval blockade and the closure of the Israeli Eilat port in the south until the aggression stops and the siege on Gaza is lifted." He clarified the remaining airliners at the airport must leave immediately, and all those present there, especially foreigners, must depart for their own safety. The Houthis have recently launched numerous ballistic missiles against Israel. The last one came on Sunday night at the same time where the Eurovision singing contest was taking place, which resulted in Israeli vocal artist Yuval Rafael finishing second. So we congratulate her on this strong result, and we look forward to hearing her perform in Israel and around the world for many years to come. And getting back to the Houthis, early this month, a missile landed near the Ben Gurion International Airport, causing many foreign carriers such as the Lufthansa Group and United States airliners to cancel flights. In a video posted on Sunday evening, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel spoke of the Houthis and their threats, saying, "This is not over. There will be more exchanges of blows. They will feel our arm. We know who stands behind them, Iran, and our eyes are fixed on it." So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will keep reporting on every development, and we ask you to help us spread the truth, share, and follow us. And above all, keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Another prayer request that we have today is for former United States President Joe Biden and his family, who received the sad news on Sunday that he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we wish to express our gratitude to President Biden for many years of friendship and support to Israel in the United States Senate and later in the White House. Let's pray for all the hostages that are being held in the Gaza Strip by Hamas terrorist organization. Let's pray for the IDF soldiers, my friends that are now in Gaza fighting and defending the Jewish state. And let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.